and Marjorie Steele, our friend from the west side of the state, I believe it is. And tell me your organization again and what those letters stand for.
Sure. So good to see you, Dave, as always. So we are the Economic Development Responsibility Alliance of Michigan. We formed in June of 2023, and it's just been a wild ride ever since.
And it makes sense as it is like it says economic responsibility. That's what anyone could ask for, right?
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Now, I will say that in the process of fighting for economic, for responsibility and economic development, it has taken us a lot into the environmental sphere and environmental protection, but also a lot into, protecting taxpayers and taxpayer dollars against abuse. It's really all part of the same work as far as we're concerned.
Okay. And I want to ask, why do you do this? You're not a lawmaker. You're not working for a big think tank or a consultant. Why do you care about this so much? You live in Michigan. You care deeply, but why put yourself out there?
I very much appreciate you asking that question, Dave. And just to be clear, we are to date a 100% volunteer-run organization. We are not
Wow.
funded. Been running 2 years strong. Pretty proud about that. Not that we're sad to not have any cash, but I think that it it allows us to speak with a certain moral authority. If I could
Yeah.
say. So I'm a boomerang myself. I was born and raised in Michigan. I came back and moved back here to Michigan because I love this place, right? Because I'm rooted here and really why well we're not just gluttons for punishment. It's because we like drinking clean water and having clean air and having soil that is capable of nourishing and feeding us here locally. It really comes down to that.
Okay, cool. Now, I want to talk about today focusing, and you have a lot of issues going on. And do you have what's the best way for people to research everything you're doing?
Sure. So, we do our best to keep our website fairly updated, EDRA of MI.org. You can also just Google us. We're pretty easy to find.
Okay.
The best way to stay up to date on what we're doing and our latest news is to subscribe to our email newsletter. You will get notified every time we publish a new blog. And we do, anything ranging from press releases to investigative pieces to op-eds and just a lot of keeping people up to date on what is going on in these communities across the state, from the UP all the way to the east side of the state.
Trying to bring up, let me put it up on your screen. Okay, I got it. Here it is. Your website. Okay, I like that. So as soon as you log on to your website, it gives you the option to subscribe.
Yep.
And that's the best way because if there's any breaking news or new
Yep.
information, you're going to blast it out to everyone.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So our breaking news, things like that, action items, those all get pushed immediately out to the email newsletter as soon as we publish them.
Okay, I'm signed up, and that's the way I learn about everything. And I'll include that in the link for people who are watching on whatever platform. I'll put it down in the comments so they can click there.
Thanks, Dave.
Um, Focusing today though, the MEDC. What is it? Michigan Economic. What does it stand for again?
Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And I like to tell people you can blame the MEDC for the reason why we have such a long and complicated name. You got
Yeah,
to fight fire with fire, right?
I don't know how much you know about. How long have they been around? Do you know the history that deeply?
A little bit, not quite enough to speak authoritatively.
Okay.
It has been around in some semblance for actually many, many decades, since before the 50s. Engler in 84, the year that I was born, tells you how old I am.
Oh, you're young. You're young.
Governor Engler signed into law the Michigan Strategic Fund, or the MSF Fund as we know it now. It really grew leaps and bounds under Governor Granholm. The Pure Michigan campaign, with the Tim Allen
Oh, oh.
voiceover, "Come to Pure Michigan." So that is the MEDC's early, venturing
Oh.
into tourism. Yep, that's all the MEDC.
Oh.
So that's kind of now. Granholm also used some of that MEDC money for, remember the mini Hollywood that she was kind of trying to
Oh
set up
yeah.
when she
Oh
was
yeah.
governor. So that was MEDC funding, and a
Okay.
lot of people had problems with that. Rick Snyder used it. I can't speak expertly to that, but he obviously used it. Now under the Whitmer administration, it has really turned from promoting these different niche industries and promoting tourism and recreation to venture capitalism.
Okay, and I have it on the screen right now. This is their website, and I want to click on their about section. Um, it's kind of difficult to find a mission statement here, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So the key pages to take a look at there are under their about pages. You want to take a look at their executive committee and their
Here we
Michigan Strategic Fund.
are. Okay.
And these pages both have information regarding. So both of these boards meet bi-monthly, quarterly. And these are public meetings that can be publicly attended. These are the meetings that we as residents need to be attending. We need to be speaking at. We have been, and it's been making, it's been making a difference, as you can
Who
see.
are these people? They come from different. They're not government employees. They're not elected. They come from various industries throughout the state.
Yep. So these are governor appointments.
So
All of
the governor specifically appoints these individuals to
Yep.
this. Okay.
Yep. Yep. And so the individuals themselves are, they range from corporate executive leaders, leaders of, large, well-known state organizations, often labor unions, things like that. We've got Acrisure, we've got
Oh,
Cromwell.
the mayor of Flint. I had no idea he was on
Mhm.
here.
Yep, and Dr. Bill Pink of Ferris State University, which is in my, my hometown here in Big
Wow.
Rapids. Yep, so we have some educational leaders on there as well. There's a few mayors.
Okay. Do they vote? Are they decision makers in money?
Yes, so it works like this. The executive committee governs the MEDC, the MSF or Michigan Strategic Fund, they vote on funding projects. So, most salient to your audiences when we're talking about the Mundy mega site or the Goshen plant in Big Rapids or
Yeah.
the Marshall plant or the now defunct Eagle Township MMIC, those were all funded through the MSF. Also, the Copperwood mine, which ended up being failed, and our legislators are trying to sneak that through another avenue, but that's
Yeah.
another
So
subject.
Michigan Strategic Fund, so that's voted on, and then it goes to lawmakers?
Yes, so once the MSF passes it, then it has to be approved by a simple majority vote in the Michigan House and Senate Appropriations Committees, not the full committee. And if I'm speaking a little bit out of turn, but if I understand the crux of the potential lawsuit that the Mackinac Center is looking at, they are looking at suing over potential constitutional violations for not adhering to the, I believe, allegedly constitutionally required 2/3 majority vote for this use of public funding.
Yeah, and now that you mention that, I wanna, declare I do work social digital stuff for the Mackinac Center, great group of people.
Yep.
So let's say when we had a Democrat trifecta, it sounds like a lot of this was just rubber stamped through then.
Yep. Yes, yes. Before we move on, there's a little minor nuance here that I don't hear anybody else talking about that I just
Okay.
think is so important. There's another important thing that happened late 2021, 2022, and that was the legalization of online gambling in Michigan. And that's important
Yeah,
because
why is that important with this?
that is where a lot of MEDC's recent influx of funding comes from. They get a lot of funding from gambling, in particular from online gambling.
Well, so wait a minute. The tax money that comes into our
Yes.
state goes to the strategic fund?
Yes. To the MEDC and to the MSF fund, specifically,
Is
yeah.
that how it was written when it was all made, or
Ooh, you got me out of my depth now,
Okay,
Dave.
okay.
You're gonna have to take that to Mackinac Center. They're the
Okay, but
experts in
okay.
that.
So this is all tax. That's a good question. A lot of people ask me and they argue with me. What we're dealing with is taxpayer money, correct?
Yes. So, well, yes, with an asterisk, right? Yes, and so it's not as simple as it's only taxpayer funding, but this is where it's really critical to understand public-private partnerships. So,
Okay.
you've heard a lot of people talking about NGOs lately, right? Ooh,
Oh,
NGOs are destroying the world. Now, I'm a old millennial, right? Who was fighting genocide in Darfur when I was in college. So
yeah.
I hear NGOs and I think like Oxfam. What I think people are referring to when they say non-governmental organizations, technically it's accurate, but really more specifically, the type of NGO that is the problem here are public-private partnerships. So the MEDC is a public-private partnership that takes private investment from corporations like a lot of kind of a traditional for-profit economic development or for-profit developer would. They take private funding from investors. The public partnership comes in that they also get taxpayer funding from state entities, specifically from the MEDC. So think of it like, an umbrella network, and the MEDC is up at the top, and they are taking taxpayer funding from things like online gambling, casinos, other taxpayer funding revenues, those in particular. And then they are, working it through the MSF board and many other grant programs. And then they're funneling it to regional public-private economic development corporations, such as the Right Place in Mecosta County, such as the Marshall Area Economic Development Alliance in Marshall, such as Flint and Genesee Economic Alliance in Mundy, and so
Yeah,
on and so forth.
let me stop the Mundy one. So with the Mundy Township thing, has there been that you know of, and if you don't know, that's fine. Has there been any private money involved in any of, or is it all public money so far?
Ooh,
I'd have
that's
to look,
that's a great question, Dave.
or maybe we
So,
don't know.
so what I would say to that is, to my knowledge, um, it is almost a sure thing that they have received private investment. To my knowledge, I don't know that that is public information.
It should be.
One would think, and I honestly can't say. I believe that they're actually, so they're nonprofit as well, by the way. These are all these economic development corporations, these public-private economic development corporations are also tax exempt. They are, I believe the designation is 501c6. So I'm not quite sure exactly what the disclosure requirements are for a C6, but that would be worth looking
So
into.
what's the name of the one in Mundy? What's the name of their
The Flint and Genesee Economic Alliance,
okay,
and that
so
is under the Flint and Genesee Economic Group, which is,
okay, so when the money's approved or the funding, it goes there.
it goes to the MEDC and then it goes to them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And then they manage it, they organize, they do whatever they're doing with it.
Yep.
And that at some point there could be maybe private money involved somehow.
Almost assuredly. I mean, it could be as simple as that private investment coming into organizational funding for, rather than for specific projects,
Okay.
possibly both. Um,
Wow. Are they? And I heard other people saying, Mackinac Center it says it well. Are they picking winners and losers? I hear that many times. That I know business owners, small business owners, who are like, "Damn, I'd like to get some of that." Or I know restaurant owners who've gone out of business, but then other big time restaurants like getting some funding. They don't think it's really a fair situation.
Well, here's what I can say to that. I can think of three definitive instances in which members of the MEDC Executive Committee or Michigan Strategic Fund Board have voted to approve projects that would benefit their employer and who subsequently ended up personally getting financially benefiting with a hefty raise. I can think of three instances. One of them is being investigated by the AG right now.
Uh,
I won't mention the other two.
yeah,
But so if that's any indicator, those are just like three that I can name off the top of my head. And I'm not
gotcha.
a lawyer, as you say. So almost assuredly, there are more. That indicates a very concerning pattern that, yes, indeed, favoritism and some rubber stamping is being played here. I mean, any of us who live in these communities that have been experiencing these mega sites like Big Rapids or Mundy would say, well, yeah, these are obviously favored. I was absolutely shocked here in Big Rapids when no one cared that there are no environmental impact studies. No one cared.
And then yeah, the same. Wow. And then in addition to that, I know Mackinac Center, whom I do social digital, I do work for them. They had a study that said only like 1 out of 11, the jobs that are promised usually don't materialize. That there was one back when the Granholm wanted to bring the movie industry in. There was one that they promised 6,000, nothing.
Yeah.
So many times it has a history of not delivering on any promises.
Yeah. And Bridge, Michigan has also done reporting and investigation that has confirmed this. They haven't come up with the exact same numbers as Mackinac Center, but Bridge has done a couple stories. I want to say one clocked them in at less than 10% of promised delivered jobs. And that's coming from Bridge, Michigan.
Yeah, damn.
Yeah.
So people might say, well, it's voted in that you get what you vote for, but it doesn't seem. So many people are questioning this now. There's a lot of controversy, some scandal going on.
Mhm.
But what is your biggest argument? And this is where we can bring up, there is a lawmaker or there is legislation. Is it being worked on to defund the MEDC, or where do we stand publicly? What can we say about that?
So publicly, we grassroots communities are in an increasingly good place. Now, I hesitate to even acknowledge that because we cannot take our foot off the gas for 1 second.
Yeah.
But we do seem to have been making an impact. I'd say we, EDRA, but also like to give all of the credit to these grassroots communities, like Mundy, like Gogebic county up in the UP, have been getting the message out there. So to answer your question, Michigan Senator Thomas Albert has introduced a set of bills, SB 486 through 91, I believe, and these bills are designed to dismantle SOAR funding, which is a specific funding mechanism that the MEDC's MSF board has been using. So Mundy Megasite, Goshen Megasite, Marshall Megasite, these were all done using the SOAR funding mechanism. And that stands for Strategic Outreach and Attraction Reserve.
If you don't have the money, you can't do anything. So yeah.
Right. So, and this is particularly interesting because this set of bills would, what he's proposing is to return all unused SOAR funds to state general funds. So, if I'm reading this correctly, what that could potentially mean is that, all of the funds that have not been spent on land acquisition, on demos for these existing projects, which would go back, which, if I'm understanding this correctly, would mean that the Right Place and FGEA out in Flint would, and possibly even Maida down in Marshall, would have to give back their unspent funding, which would leave these projects in limbo.
The problem, though, we have, and that's a Republican House and for now a Democratic Senate, but there's a lot of people, even Democrats,
Yeah.
Dana Nessel or others, who are starting to question the MEDC.
Yeah.
So I was going to say that would automatically be shut down in the Senate, but
not necessarily. We
Yeah.
are quietly making some serious progress with Democrats, and there was a huge shakeup. Let me try to put this tactfully this way. Whitmer got a lot of what she wanted in December of 2024, but I think that came at a cost, and I think that we're going to we're already beginning to see that cost come into effect.
Let me put up on a screen. I Googled MEDC. If I would have done this 3 years ago, I would have not seen these results. Defund the MEDC.
Yep.
All these articles are just constantly questioning MEDC. Well, except for the MEDC article there. All of this. But 2 years ago, this would have never showed up. There wouldn't have been a question about MEDC. So it's because of your work, others, organizations. Do you finally think now it's coming to the limelight for the average person, starting to question, hey, what's going on?
It is. People are starting to talk about it. People are starting to, realize these very complex systems, they're designed to be complex so that we don't understand them, so that we don't, protest against them. But, I forgot to mention, in addition to that bill that he's already introduced to dismantle SOAR funding, that Senator Albert already announced that he is working currently on legislature to, as he says, responsibly dismantle the MEDC. And we are now, whether or not that can get enough support from the Democrats in the Senate, I don't know. But what I will say is that we are a lot closer to that than we ever have been. So I have genuine optimism.
Good. One last question. Is this why 2026, everything's on the ballot, right? In Michigan, pretty much, with the governor, House, Senate? Is it all out there? I know the governor.
I think so. Yeah.
Is this why it's going to be so important? And will this be a big discussion in any political race, I'm assuming?
I think so. It's going to get real interesting.
Or it should be.
Almost all of our gubernatorial candidates so far on both sides of the aisles are very pro MEDC. Don't let anybody fool you that Duggan is. Just ask our neighbors out in Detroit how he's been as a mayor. I do think that this is going to be, and the key message, if I could, the takeaway for your audience, this is going to be a key point of leverage and in the 2026 elections. And regardless of what side of the political aisle you fall on, this is critical for everyone to put pressure on all of our legislators, all of them.
And I call all the reporters out in the state, print, TV, radio, whatever, when you get the opportunity to ask any candidate these questions. Hit them hard with it.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Governor Whitmer, she didn't call an election in my area where I live forever, and there was no reporters were even pressing her on it. So it's not the same. When I'm 50 years old now, when I was a young buck in journalism and starting out, I challenged officials left and right. You don't have that as much. It happens occasionally, but I'd like to see more of that in Michigan. Just like when you get these candidates up on a stage, ask them, MEDC, lay it out. How do you stand about this?
Yep. Yep. And we are seeing legislators and candidates start to get a little bit of courage in this regard. And I think that they're getting it from the momentum from grassroots. So let's just everybody keep up the pressure on all sides of the aisle. As Barry Wayne Adams, one of my all-time favorite grassroots protesters in Marshall says, keep it up. It's working.